Welcome to the Memory Lane podcast. My name is Pete Berthaud, and I'll be your host for the first episode of our Game Rewind series. Tonight's featured game is the 2017 men's basketball victory over UVA, the double overtime thriller, the ball on the rim game, as most of us know it. My fellow panelists, we've got Robert Irby and Ed Williams. Rob, how you doing, man?
Doing great, man. I'm just ready to relive this. This was one of my favorite basketball games I've probably ever watched.
Ed, what's up, dude?
Yeah, this was a really fun game to be at. I enjoyed doing the research before this and watching some of the highlights to just remember. It kind of like brought me back to where I was sitting in Castle and all that stuff. So yeah, that was an awesome game and kind of a trademark victory for this team as they built towards the future. But this was the first of many really big wins this group of guys had.
Absolutely. And I don't want to waste too many pleasantries time on that with you guys because we're going to get to know you a little bit better as we go through the segments here because we got a ton of stuff to cover. So let's just dive right into this. And you mentioned a little bit about it, but I want to talk to you guys and ask you guys why you felt like this was a good game to rewind. Like, what about this game got your attention, was a moment for Tech? Like, what speaks to you about this game?
I'll go first, Irby, and then I'll pass it to you. I think, like kind of what I said in the intro, I think this was a really big win and maybe not a turning point, but a big landmark for this group of players and this coaching staff and their tenure at Virginia Tech, and kind of showed them what they were capable of building towards the future. And obviously, some of the older guys on this team had a huge impact on this game alone, but it was a big moment for a lot of the younger guys as well as they built towards that 2019 team. So I think when they all look back at this game, they might see it in a similar light. But yeah, overall, I just think it was a huge building block for the program at the time.
Yeah, I mean, we'll dive more into the context of, what was going on before the game happened and all that. But this was a team that wasn't playing its best basketball, a program that was still really being built from the ground up. And this was the kind of win where they needed some lucky breaks, and they got one in the ball literally getting stuck on the rim, something I've had never seen happen before and haven't seen since. Just a crazy, crazy game where, yeah, I mean, Tech just started building towards this future and becoming the program that we know and love today.
The image of the ball on the rim is so iconic in terms of Virginia Tech basketball. It's probably one of the top 5 most iconic images of our history when it comes to basketball. And it wasn't even on a play where our guy put it up, but nevertheless, it was a huge moment. And the names on the teams at the time also are a reason why I felt like this was a great. I mean, you had Justin Robinson, Allen, Lede, Bibbs, and on UVA, Parentes, Kyle Guy, Jerome, Takita, guys that won national championship a couple years later. Those names for both schools are so big and so memorable that it just adds to the lore of this game. And we're recording this podcast now because we happen to have a game in Castle against UVA this upcoming Saturday. So maybe instead of a game preview for that game, we're kind of rehashing some of our old glory. And hey, I'm here for it. Let's get started with that 2016, 2017 season and what the men's basketball team was like at that point in time, because this was year 3 for Buzz Williams at Virginia Tech. We hadn't made the tournament with him, and we hadn't made it period since 2006, 2007. So we're talking about 10 years. And the season before, Buzz was getting us on track. We had a surprisingly good run through the ACC. We went 10-8, but it was kind of a weak ACC that year. We went to the NIT, lost a close game, but you could see that the excitement for the future was there, but we still hadn't gotten that elusive NCAA berth in a really long time. In the preseason, we received some votes. We were not in the AP poll, which wasn't a surprise, but we did receive some votes, and it was partially because this was Virginia Tech's best roster in many, many years. And I'm going to let one of you guys kind of explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good roster centered around 2 veterans. Seth Allen came over from Maryland, had to sit out a year, was obviously a huge part of this team, and Zach Lede, one of the more obscure favorite college basketball players I think I have. He was always undersized every single night in whatever matchup he had, and still found a way to put up really good numbers on the offensive end. 2 just really good leaders, and I think guys whose importance to the program when they were there and moving into the future, I don't think can be understated. And then, yeah, young Justin Robinson, Ahmed Hill, Justin Bibbs, Ty Outlaw, all these guys that went on to do such amazing things for Virginia Tech. And Chris Clark, I know this game in particular was a bummer for him, but also a really good player who had a good career for the Hokies. And then, yeah, Kadeem C was on the roster and actually had a solid game and had his spurts and moments when he was a very good player for Virginia Tech as well. So the mix of the old guys and the new guys, the guys Buzz brought with him that were freshmen or from the portal or transferred in, all that good stuff. It was kind of a clash of a roster that culminated in a very good team. And I think it was very important the way Buzz stacked that roster up with guys from the portal and veterans to help usher along those younger guys who he knew had talent because he handpicked them for his first full recruiting class there, and Justin Robinson, Chris Clark, Kerry Blackshear. So it is what I said earlier, building blocks towards the future with this roster, and they had some bumps along the way, but then they had some really high moments like this game. So very cool roster that played a big part in the Virginia Tech basketball history.
Absolutely. It was very much a transitional roster too, because some people might be wondering why you didn't talk more about Kerry Blackshear, and that's because this was that weird year we had a leg thing and he didn't play the entire year. And then a guy named Devin Wilson, who made a lot of contributions to the basketball program, a little bit of a contribution to the football program. He also didn't play this season because he had been playing football and came back. He's actually in the videos of this game, and you might see him later, but he didn't play during the season. So a very kind of a funny mix of characters, but a lot of good players from our history and just great characters on this team. The ACC was also loaded that year. We had Justin Jackson, John Collins, Donovan Mitchell, Luke Kennard, Jason Tatum, just to name a few of the guys across the ACC. The league was really good, and UVA started the preseason at number 8 with Parantes and Takite, Shayak, Devin Hall, guys I had mentioned earlier. They also had a couple of stud freshmen in Kyle Guy and Ty Jerome. It's funny to think about. You think about those guys being vets, but at one point they were freshmen, and it was in this 2016-2017 season. So
Kyle
you look
Guy
at
had a man bun.
He did. That was when he had the longer hair.
He
That's very
looked
true.
awful.
I had forgotten about that. So a 9-9 finish in the ACC would have been very respectable, and I think about was what was expected of this team was to go 500 in ACC play. Before we kind of tear into how they performed, I wanted to ask you guys where you were in your lives at this point. Were you at Tech, and where were you in your VT Hoops fanhood? Because I know that doesn't always align with the football fanhood. We grow up watching football with our dads, or your dad went to Tech, so you're a big football guy, but maybe you weren't into the Hoops team. And then finally, I want to know where you were for the game. And Irby, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so I was a student at Virginia Tech at the time. I was wrapping up, I guess, my sophomore year. As far as my Virginia Tech fandom goes for basketball, I'd grown up going to games. I grew up right outside of Blacksburg and Radford, so I'd grown up like during the Seth Greenberg era and that sort of thing. But the fandom had definitely died as Virginia Tech was perennially finishing in last place in the ACC. I would say that it wasn't until the previous year when, we made a decent run. I believe we were in the NIT that year. And that was kind of the first year that buzz actually started to show like, hey, there's some juice in this program. That was when I first started to really, really kind of just pour myself into Virginia Tech hoops. And from that point on, I mean, it was so easy to love. All the guys on that team were so easy to love. So I was just hitting my peak of Virginia Tech hoops fandom.
And where were you for the game?
Oh, that's right. I was in Castle Coliseum in the student section, loudly cheering the boys on. It was awesome.
Ed?
Yeah, I was also at the game. And then in terms of where I was in life, I was in my first year at Virginia Tech. I just transferred from Ferrum College. So this was obviously a really fun time to be beginning to follow Virginia Tech basketball. I had watched them a decent amount the year prior because Justin Robinson was a friend going into college. So I was just following him. So passively following Virginia Tech at the time. And then when I got to Virginia Tech as a student, obviously became a full-fledged Hokie basketball fan. And it was a very fun time. A good time to get my foot in the door with the Hokies basketball program because it only took off from here. But yeah, I was at the game. Um, Very fun team. I guess this was my first full year as a Hokie fan. We can call it that probably.
Nice, man. Yeah, I was a pretty diehard Tech Hoops fan during the Seth Greenberg era, and I was much farther out of college. I was not at the game. I'm the only one on this panel not at the game, but in fact, I wasn't even in the country when this game happened. I was in Mexico on vacation with my wife, and I listened to the entire game on the Hokie Sports app. John Laser. That was how I absorbed this game, and I also had friends sending me like videos of their television to my cell phone because I could not find the game anywhere in the resort. They didn't have the ESPNs. I don't know, but I was all torn up because I really wanted to watch it, but I did listen to the entire thing. So I do have that going for me. I had recently moved to Philly, so I wasn't like in like that mode. I used to go to Hard Times for like every basketball game back when I lived in Arlington. That was the spot right off the Clarendon Metro. Me and my buddy Brian would go there Saturday during January, freezing cold Saturday, just bunker down in Hard Times and drink all day watching the Hokies and other basketball games. But I love Tech Hoops, and when we got Buzz Williams, I was jacked up, and to see it get to this point, like I was so ready for this season. And I love Justin Robinson. I thought he was a great point guard, a potentially great point guard, and he did end up being that for us. And to watch him grow into this season was very, very cool as a Tech basketball fan. Just time period stuff for you guys. Number one song on the charts, Bad and Bougie. Now, Irby, I know that was your jam back in college, right?
No, I was still jamming out to Closer by the Chainsmokers.
Okay.
I was jamming out to it about 3 months after it went down from number one, you know?
Yes, yes. Well, it's funny. That song was huge when we went to the Battle of Bristol, or it was just coming out in September. And then it was still number 3 on the charts when you get to this game in February. That thing had some staying power.
Oh, yeah. You walk around Center Street, it was still going every Saturday morning.
The Patriots had just had their comeback win against the Falcons like a week before this game happened. So, again, to just frame it for the listener. And the movies weren't very good at this time. We had the Lego Batman movie was number 1, followed by 50 Shades Darker. John Wick 2 was number 3, and that is a cool movie. But a couple weeks after the game, Get Out came out, and that was obviously a big, big movie that year. Out of conference play was fantastic for us. If we want to start getting into the nuts and bolts of the season, we plowed through our out of conference. We went 11-1. It was a weak schedule, but there were some highlights. Did you guys have any memories from the out of conference slate that year?
I remember watching us beat Michigan at Michigan and just thinking to myself, like, God, when is the last time I've seen a Virginia Tech basketball team win a game like this?
Yeah.
To beat a Power 5 opponent, a non-conference Power 5 opponent on the road. I mean, it had been years and years. I just remember thinking like, okay, we really might have something here.
And it was Mo Wagner, right? That team, Michigan's a good, it's not just a P5 program. It's a good P5 program that played in a national championship just a couple years later, I believe. So that was a huge win. And then wasn't there a tight game down in Ole Miss?
That may have been in Blacksburg.
Oh,
but
that
it
was
a
in
tight
Castle.
game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So the only loss coming out of conference play was to Texas A&M, coincidentally enough, out in California in the Wooden Legacy Classic. We lost 68-65, and even that one was very, very winnable.
Was that Alex Caruso?
Oh, man. I'm not sure. I can't say with any definitive.
I think it was.
I think you might be right, though. The timing makes sense. But ACC play was a little bit of a different story. Does one of you guys want to help me out with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, we start ACC play on New Year's Eve, hosting number 5 Duke in Castle Coliseum. The Grayson Allen-less Duke Blue Devils.
Famously.
And we beat the absolute brakes off of them, won by, I believe, 18. Now, the reason why Grayson Allen was not playing for Duke, if y'all will recall, in his previous game against Elon, he had intentionally tried to trip someone, and Coach K said, "I'm suspending him indefinitely." That was my Coach K impression. And then they lose one game on the road, and Coach K says he's learned his lesson, and he's right back. So, so Grayson Allen was suspended for 1 game for literally trying to injure someone for the 2nd time in his career. Uh, Nevertheless, Virginia Tech was 12-1 at this point, 1-0 in the ACC. Had to be feeling pretty good. And then, I really think the youth kind of caught up with Tech because, aside from Seth Allen and Lede being these older leaders, kind of the crux of the production and the entire starting lineup really was all younger players, especially with Robinson and Chris Clark, Hadim C, guys like that. So we gave up 104 points to NC State in a loss. A couple days later, lost by 15 to Florida State. Bounced back with a win against Syracuse at home by 10. Then lost to a ranked Notre Dame on the road. Then had a little moment where we were winning some clutch games, a couple 1-point wins in a row. Georgia Tech at home, Clemson on the road. Granted, neither of those teams were very good. So on one hand, those weren't really games that needed to be close in the first place. And then, 3 of our next 4 we lost. Got absolutely walloped by UVA in Charlottesville, 71-48. So going into that UVA game on February 12th, we were 16-7 overall, 5-6 in the ACC, had lost 2 in a row. We were at 54th in the KenPom on the day of the game, meaning we were very much on the bubble and were pretty much in danger of dropping a couple games under 500 in conference play, which would have been a decent sized hole to dig out of. By comparison, UVA was number 2 in KenPom, number 12 in the AP. They were 18-5, 8-3 in the conference, and had just come off a pretty enormous win over number 4 Louisville. They had the 9th ranked strength of schedule in the country. Yeah, we needed a win. UVA was playing really well. They were a really good team. Granted, maybe not quite the caliber as they grew to over the next couple of years. They kind of, everything flowed through London Parentes a little too much. But that said, they were still very good. They just crushed us, and we needed a win bad.
Yeah, we really did. And you got to keep in mind, too, that UVA had beaten us 9 out of 10 times going into this game. And I think it might have been like 11 out of 13 as well. They have been dominating us. And often the margin was in the mid-teens to 20s when they beat us. So we stole one from them the year before, but beating them was a huge deal. And if we were able to do it back on this day, it would have proven, and it did prove, that we were going to be able to compete with them going forward as contenders and peers in the ACC rather than being a doormat. So it was a really big game. And I think we've kind of set it up enough. There's enough building. We need to talk about the game itself. And for you guys that were there, and Ed, I'll start with you. The pregame environment, what was it like? Was it warm, loud? Was it full? Did people show up early? What was it like that day?
It was pretty full, as you'd expect it to be. Everyone was on the student section, at least, the away bench and Castle's near the student section. So everyone was chirping Grayson Allen pretty much the entire pregame and throughout, as you'd kind of expect. But it was a full house. It was a good environment and proved to be a very, very good game where the team needed the environment as much as they possibly could get. So it was a very full Castle Coliseum that was chirping the heck out of Grayson Allen pregame.
So I got actually a clip from a buddy of ours. Clark Rulin sent me this clip from the pregame kind of festivities. So I'll just play it. It's short. They had the lights going in the crowd, the air horns were blowing, the place was getting fired up. And I think like it was like Castle's hot, right? Like most of the time when you're at a game, it's warm in there. And once it starts getting warm and the students start getting loud, it's an intimidating environment. And it definitely seemed like we had that going early on. In the first half, I want to get some of you guys' observations. And because we kind of got out to a tough start. We were down by double digits. But after getting down early, Seth Allen hit a trio of threes and we got it back to 24-23. and the students seemed like they were into it. And I'm guessing, Irby, you're feeling like you had a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was really interesting to note as well, with this being Virginia, not only is it a high caliber opponent, it's also your rival. And this was kind of the first time that the students got to experience um, actually feeling like you have a chance to beat UVA while you're there in person, because we beat them the year before, but students were on break. So no one was there to
Mm.
see it. Um, and that one was more of just kind of like a plucky upset. That wasn't necessarily like, hey, we're your peers. Um, so yeah, people were really hype. People were believing, especially, yeah, we cut it to a point like it's sort of late in the first half, and people were like, yeah, I mean, we're going to do this again, and we're actually going to be here to see it. So yeah, the energy was definitely palpable.
Yeah, and it's 23-24 at the 4-minute mark of the first half. But we didn't score another point going into halftime. UVA went on a 13-0 run, and it's 37-23 at the half. So that feeling in your gut at halftime are like, it can't be good, right? Because they just thumped us. We were in it. Everyone's excited, and then we go down by 2 touchdowns essentially. Ed, how you feeling at halftime? Are you thinking about leaving at all?
No, no, no. That was never my style, especially at basketball games. But yeah, I mean, that you anytime you go down on a 13-0 run into the half, you can't be feeling very good in the locker room, and the fans certainly aren't feeling very good in the stands. So they needed a huge run in the second half, and they were able to come up with it. But yeah, that 13-0 run was absolutely brutal.
Yeah, and I think it's important to sort of reiterate that like the air kind of got sucked out of the gym for a little bit because we didn't really believe in this team yet the way that you would believe in a Virginia Tech basketball team today. Like again, we were just used to so many years of mediocrity and being way worse than mediocre, and they had just blown us out. Like, we just kind of figured it was a wrap. I mean, I myself wasn't thinking about leaving because, like Ed, I don't do that, but you know, the thoughts were definitely there. And I think the focus kind of shifted to let's just start chirping the UVA players on the bench instead of focusing on the actual game. Um, yeah, so we definitely needed a spark there, and thankfully we got it.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a here we go again, right? Irby, like
Yeah,
it
totally.
feels like we can't do this. We're never going to get over this hump at halftime. And Buzz actually had a great quote after the game. He said, "If you're down 14 at the half against a top 8 team and the number 1 defensive team, the second slowest team per possession in the country, that's like being down 30 to anyone else." And it's so true. Like it felt like an impossible mountain to climb at that point. And Lede, one of our studs, didn't have a single point in the first half, which is also crazy to think about. So I don't know what Buzz said to them in the locker room, but it must have been great because we caught up in large part to Lede coming alive. He had 9 points in about a 3.5 minute stretch early in the second. He capped it with a 3-point play at the 13-minute mark, which cut it to 4. So within 7 minutes, we had already shaved 10 points off the lead. And those final 13 minutes of regulation that were an absolute slugfest. And you got to also remember at that point, like around the 13-minute, 12-minute mark, is when Chris Clark goes down with his injury. And so it was okay, we're cutting it, cutting it, cutting it. You see him come down on that leg, and it's another blow to the gut at that point. But somehow a minute later, we're about 12, 11 minutes. We had the deficit down to 2 points. So it was an incredible effort by our guys, led by Lede, but a bunch of guys contributing, Hill and Robinson, all those guys. I'm wondering if that heat I was talking about in the building kind of got to UVA, because you know how Buzz likes to run things. Like he was going up and down. He always prided the conditioning. Ed, do you think that had something to do with it, how hot it was in there?
I mean, it could have. I don't know. I just think Virginia Tech in general had all the momentum. For what the first 16 minutes of the first half, we played a really good game, and then coming out of halftime, we continued to play that really good game we had played the first 16. So, but not for that 4-minute stretch. This might have been a pretty easy Hokie victory. But you come to expect lulls like that. You're not going to play a complete 40-minute game when you're playing that many young guys. So If it were not for that 4-minute stretch in the first half, this may have been a regulation win for Virginia Tech. So I think Virginia Tech was playing a good game anyway. Just that one little stretch, which is the difference between, championship level teams and younger teams, was the difference in the game at that point. So once they got through that and Virginia Tech came back out in the second half and played the way they were for the first 16 minutes, they kind of cruised.
Yeah, and to that point of how close it was, from 4 minutes to go in the game, through overtime, neither team got up by more than 3 points. I mean, this was lead changes, tie ball games, and I think the lead only got to 3 once, and I believe that was in the first overtime. But we're talking about 14 straight minutes of play that it didn't go more than 3 points either direction. So it was hotly contested, came down to the wire, and Justin Bibbs, we talk about Seth Allen because of what happens at the end, but Bibbs hit so many clutch shots throughout the second half. 2 threes at the end of regulation, along with that ridiculous layup. And in fact, I'm going to play that shot for you right now.
6 a couple of times late, but could not come all the way back. Here's Bibbs off the turnover. Ahead of the break, throws it up, got it! What a shot! And a chance to tie at the free throw line.
The turnover leading to offensive opportunities for Jonathan Bibbs. Bibbs not putting on the brakes, but keeping his foot on the gas pedal and finding his way to the rim.
I mean, that's the craziest shot of the whole game right there. I mean, he flips it over his head, puts this nasty spin on it, and is perfect.
Yeah, I don't know how it went in. And when I told you, like, my buddy was sending me clips of the television, that was the one I remember, was that Bibbs shot, because it was just so unbelievable at the time. But on the second 3 that he made at the end of regulation, we actually took a 61-59 lead. His shooting was so crucial in this game. And this is always the 2 steps forward, 1 step back thing. We take that lead. Leday fouls out. So Leday fouls out, it gets tied up again. And now, like, oh, we're going to go to overtime without Zach Leday. Now, we didn't know we were going to overtime yet, but losing him again was just a punch to the gut.
Yeah, and I mean, you couple that with the fact that Chris Clark is out as well. That caused Ty Outlaw to have to step in and play. And granted, Ty Outlaw didn't have his normal type of game. He didn't make a single 3. He still played some pretty crucial minutes, especially with a tough defensive assignment against Isaiah Wilkins. Like, that dude was a scrapper, and he was big and he was tough. So yeah, I commend Ty Outlaw for that.
Yeah, because they missed the front end of a 1-and-1 at the end of regulation. So we have the ball down 2 with 9 seconds left. And this is Seth Allen's first act at the end of a period, because this was a recurring theme here. He brings it down the court, drives in, ball hits the rim, and it was actually a pretty good shot and looked like it was going to go in, but it rims out, and Ty Outlaw, man on the spot, tips it in, and it's 63-63, and we're going overtime. And I believe I have a
2 ties it, a 3 wins it. Allen to the basket. The tip is good by Outlaw. We're tied with a second left. Here's Thompson. He'll heave it. Overtime in Blacksburg.
So we're headed to overtime. And it's funny because Outlaw was known for his 3-point shooting. He's known for his shooting in general. And that was his only points of the game, I think.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, that's just wild.
And he never made a ton of 2-pointers in the first place, you know?
No. His one job was to get out there and get behind the arc and shoot. And if we're moving to the first overtime now, that was as ugly a period of basketball there ever was. The teams combined to go 3 of 13 from the floor, just 5 points for each team in that period. And with a minute left in the first overtime, Perennial hit a layup to give them the 3-point lead I was talking about earlier. But Justin Bibbs came up huge again, hits the 3 with 51 seconds left, ties it at 68, and that's when the famous play happened.
Perennial drives on Outlaw. The ball is stuck on the rim. Jump ball. possession arrow, Virginia Tech.
The beautiful left-handed layup, and somehow or another just finds a resting spot on the back of the rim.
That's just so ridiculous.
Shout out to number one, Anish Shroff on the call, and number two, all the Virginia Tech players for immediately knowing that that's a jump ball.
Right.
'Cause,
And
I mean,
we had the possession arrow.
yeah. Because I mean, in the stands, I'll just tell you, we were like, what happens now? Like if we saw it happen, we're like, what do we get the ball? Like what happens? And then, obviously realized, but they were all Johnny on the spot, especially the Tech players. Seth Allen throws his hands up in a V, like a victory formation. They knew.
It was definitely the oh shit moment of the game, if you will. There's other contenders out there, but that ball being stuck on the back of the rim, we said it's iconic, the image, all of it. And obviously that would have given UVA the lead with about 15, 16, 17 seconds left. And maybe that's it for us. Other contenders for oh shit moments, do you guys have them?
I think I wasn't. I didn't want to talk about it earlier because I didn't know what you had clips of and what you didn't. But Justin Bibbs hit 2 massive threes in this game, in addition to that ridiculous layup that we already touched on. I know you talked about the threes, but Bibbs was 4 of 6 from 3 in this game and had 16 points. I think everyone remembers, the Parentis thing and then how awesome Seth Allen was off the bench. But Justin Bibbs was phenomenal on this night as well.
Yeah, honestly, the one moment that has always stuck in my mind is that Bibbs layup. So I won't harp on it again, but
Great.
Still just such a magical moment.
Yeah, and then he hit 2 threes. I think one was to tie it in regulation, and then one in overtime. He was awesome that night.
Yeah, and what I had listed was the 3-pointer by Bibbs in the first overtime.
Yeah.
The one that tied it, because it was so clutch. All right, so moving on to the second overtime. This was better than the first. 6 of 12 combined from the field, but we were really going to the line. And I guess if guys are getting tired, that is a solid strategy. And we were 5 of 6 from the line in that second overtime. 4 lead changes in the second overtime itself. Think 5 minutes, 4 lead changes, multiple tie games as well. Bibbs made another huge 3, as Ed referenced, with us down 2 to put us up 75-74. Parentis goes to the line and sinks both. And so we're down 1, and we get 3 more free throws. J-Rob came up big with 2, and he hitting both after a foul by Kyle Guy. And then Hall tied the game. If you can't keep track, Hall tied the game, and that's when Allen did his thing at the end of the game. And I'll play that clip for you right now. This is the end of the second overtime.
Allen working on Shayok. Allen in the lane, gets it to the goal. Final seconds. Here's Parentis for the win. Virginia Tech with a double overtime win in Blacksburg.
Seth Allen coming up with a huge bucket to get the Hokies a statement win here at home against the in-state rival Wahoos.
It was better just to get the team win, but it was great, for the team to trust me with the ball in my hands. I just tried to make a play towards the rim. In the first overtime, I was tired. I let fatigue get to me, and I was shooting 3, and I knew I just had to keep attacking.
I had rushed the court twice this season at this point. First for that Duke
Yeah.
game on New Year's Eve, and then for this game. So I was getting well accustomed with the floor in Castle Coliseum after this one.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that too. That was well, you notice in that clip too, the Heidi Tidies, or not the Heidi Tidies, the high techs. Sorry, big distinction. The high techs formed an arc to keep us cornered to the end of the court. We didn't take the whole court. So if you watch the video, especially from a neutral party, it looks pretty lame. But I can tell you, from a fan perspective, especially hopping that 8-foot wall to get down there, that was euphoric.
I can only imagine, fellas, that the celebration afterwards was so cool. But I want to talk about Seth Allen and the way he got that basket real quick, because there's 17 seconds left again in the second overtime, just like the first overtime. And like he said in that post-game clip, he drove in this time rather than settling for the 3. And with how short Allen is, to do that jump stop and then pump fake and then put it up over the outstretched arms of Shayok, was one of the most impressive plays of his career and might go down as the most impressive. It was just so incredible. And every time I watch the clip, like I can't believe that it goes in. It's such a good move to get inside. And I actually have one more angle of that came from Clark. Let's play that. He's probably sitting not too far from you guys in the student section, and the roar of the crowd is just unbelievable at the end there. It I want to talk about those end of the game scenarios because they did all come down to Seth Allen. And with how good Justin Bibbs was playing, it's kind of surprising, right, Ed?
Yeah, I just think that at this point in their respective careers, Seth Allen was the guy that the coaching staff wanted the ball in his hands for the reasons you talked about with the jump stop and the ability to, little pump fake, create just enough room to get off a clean look at it. That's just a veteran guard who had played a lot of minutes at that point, both at Maryland and then at Virginia Tech. So I totally understand Seth Allen being the guy late in the clock, and he had moments like that throughout the other games in the season where he's the guy late in the clock. So just a veteran guard knowing how to get just enough room to get that shot off in the lane and bury it and walk out of there with a win.
Yeah, he was that safety blanket that Buzz had where he could say, "Hey, we just need a bucket, go get it." And because Allen was such a great creator, he had that arsenal of moves, the jump stop, like you mentioned, especially against Shayok, who was arguably UVA's best on-ball defender
Yeah.
at that point in time, especially on the perimeter. Um, to get him sliding by and give himself some space to lay it up with his left hand is yeah, it was quite a move.
And Seth Allen's career at Tech kind of got off to a little bit of a bumpy start because he was hyped coming in from Maryland as a transfer, but he didn't play that well in his first season with Tech. Like he played fine and it was okay. But this game, along with he hit the free throws in the other UVA game last year, but like he started to really emerge as a leader from this point forward. And even into our tournament run, he really proved to be one of the best guards, smaller guards that we ever had at Tech, and it was really like a pleasure to watch him grow, and that's a credit to Buzz Williams to pull the best out of him as he kept going through his career. I wanted to talk a little bit about. Let's go to just the after the game stuff, and we'll kind of if we want to peel back to anything we can, but I wonder what the locker room was like after that game because it was on a Sunday night. So it's not as if the students are really going out and partying at Tots, but I wonder if those players were hitting the bars afterwards or anything because that's not the kind of thing like that doesn't happen every day. And Buzz would usually give his guys 24 hours, right, to really soak it in.
I doubt it because they played Pitt 2 days later. This game was
There
on a
you go.
Sunday,
There you go, Ed.
and they played Pitt on a Tuesday right after that with a game that they ended up winning by 3 points on the road. So
Oh, that's right.
I doubt they got the opportunity to go out, but I also doubt that they practiced the next day. They probably just had a walkthrough and then flew up to Pittsburgh. Quick turnaround on that one from the schedule. Thanks a lot, ACC.
Yeah,
They
this was
handled it like pros.
it was the first of 3 games in 6 days, if I remember. We had another game that following Saturday. So it was 3 games in 6 days. So you're right. They were absolutely not partying, or they shouldn't have been afterwards. The win itself was huge for the resume, and we know that. And I believe that we can all appreciate what it did for our tournament hopes. But the very close loss to Louisville, while disappointing, again showed the mettle of this team a couple days later. And it really showed the emergence of Ty Outlaw and what he could do. And it's odd that injury to Chris Clark and what you said earlier, Rob, it opened the door for better spacing due to more play by Ty Outlaw. Is that the same read you guys had?
Yeah, because Ty Outlaw was just a completely different player than Chris Clark. Chris Clark was kind of this Swiss Army knife of a player where he was a good passer, good ball handler, could slash, great rebounder, but he was never a great jump shooter. And Ty Outlaw was like the complete opposite. Great jump shooter, one of the best in Virginia Tech history, but kind of was slower coming in some of the other areas. So it completely changed how defenses had to play against Virginia Tech, and they really used that to your advantage. And I would imagine that cleared up a lot for Zach Leday and guys like that in the post as well.
So we went 4-2 down the stretch in ACC play, including a win against number 25 Miami. And in that Miami game, Outlaw hit 8 threes. And was that the VT record at the time? I think it might have been.
It was until Robinson broke it his senior
Yes.
year against Syracuse.
That's right. Absolutely. So yeah, big picture. This game, like you were talking about at the beginning, Ed, did it kind of take this team to a new level? Do you think this game solely kind of was that stepping stone?
This combined with Duke, I would say probably showed them that they could hang at this level. You go on the rest of the season, you're only maybe bad loss the rest of the year after this game was they lost to Wake Forest and then turned around and beat Wake Forest. I don't know. I think it just showed them they could hang in these games. They had, I always think the college basketball teams that are going to succeed late in the season and into the postseason are the ones with veteran guards, and they had that in Seth Allen. They had a veteran big and Zach Leday, and then they had a bunch of really talented guys around those two to make life easier for them. So I think it was kind of a springboard effect, especially when you're able to knock off a team that crushed you 2 games prior. It shows that this team was here, maybe a little early, had a schedule for in terms of what Buzz probably had in mind, but Virginia Tech was ready to roll and they were on the map. Anytime you beat Duke and UVA, you're all of a sudden on the map, and they were in a big way.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I agree with you. It transformed Virginia Tech from a kind of a bottom feeder P5 to a perennial tournament team. And our backs were against the wall at the 20-minute mark. And whatever Buzz did, whatever he had coached them up, that comeback ability, that medal I was talking about, it all came out in the second half. And we took that necessary step to become nationally relevant. And we haven't really looked back. And even though Buzz left, Witt went out there, we got Mike Young, and he's continued what Buzz has built, despite the fact that we were kind of gutted when Mike Young came in. He's built it back up quick. And I know we struggled a little bit recently, but it changed the tenor of this program, what we expect from this program. And I really believe that UVA win, because of the way it essentially got us into the tournament, made us a lock, it was the pivotal moment in modern Virginia Tech basketball history. I really do believe that.
Yeah, and it was so interesting, because we went on to obviously make the NCAA tournament I believe we were a 9 seed, lost to Wisconsin in the first round. But think about a 9 seed. That's not a bubble team. Like, we were above the bubble for sure, which was so bizarre.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, my only experience, because frankly, I was too young during the last NCAA tournament appearance. What was that, 07?
Yes.
I hadn't really started watching basketball yet. I was still playing Mario Kart on my Game Boy all the time. Yeah, so my only experience with Tech in the NCAA tournament was very negative because of the Seth Greenberg Bubble Boy days. So to just go to the, I guess they had a viewing party in Castle Coliseum with the team for the selection show, and to just go there and know hey, it's not if, it's when, when we are placed in this tournament, was so bizarre. And then I'm pretty sure we were one of the first teams announced, because they did I guess they do it in groups of 4, and we were in the first group of 4. And then so it was all right, great. 2 minutes in, let's go home. That's it. We're in.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because with how much we were on the bubble in the mid aughts into 2010, 2011, you really thought when we finally did get in, it was going to be real slim margins. But doing parts of the UVA win, the Miami win, the Duke win, we didn't have to sweat it out. And Buzz, even though we went the same record in the ACC, I talked about how good the ACC was this season. And going 10-8 that year was more than enough to get us in when you add that Michigan win and that Ole Miss win and a couple other things. So we were the 9 seed. We played a very good Wisconsin team that a lot of people thought they were the 8. but a lot of people thought Wisconsin should have been a 5 or better. Like that was a very good Wisconsin team that we ended up losing to, and we were in that game for a while too. Ed, did you have any final thoughts on this game or just that season in general?
I just wanted to add on top of what Irby just brought up. I think it was a great point talking about the selection show viewing party in Castle that Buzz started. That under him and what they were able to build, starting with this team, that became a tradition. I went to a few of those, and that was a really cool thing that they were able to do, and then continue to build on year after year, and make that something that students could kind of look forward to. They always did a good job with it, and the fact that he was able to build that into a tradition is something that is pretty awesome, and kind of started with this team. So,
I mean, a lot of Hokie fans have a sour taste in their mouth when we think about Buzz Williams. I just think it's the spurned ex-lover kind of thing. That so on Twitter, people are kind of rooting for Texas A&M to lose and all this stuff. But as you just pointed out, the little things that he did to build this program into what it's become were huge for us. And without him, who knows where we are right now? Because when James Johnson left, this program was in a dumpster. I mean, it was in really bad shape, and he brought us so many memories, including this game. So I thank Buzz for that. He's kind of a weird dude. No one will ever say otherwise, but man, did he build our program into something we can be proud of. And I just want to thank you guys for coming on tonight and helping me kind of recount this game. I really do appreciate it. Rob, did you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, share more of a personal anecdote, if I may, just to kind of, you know, we're all Hokies here, and I feel like we can kind of share these memories together. But this game in particular was a pretty memorable one for me. I had just lost my grandmother 4 days before, and so that was a hard time, very emotional time. Had spent a lot of time with family, and the first thing I did when I came back to campus was I went to this game. And, so it was again, a very emotional time for me. I was very close with my grandmother. And so the first thing to happen is this just incredible game, where Tech wins in such dramatic fashion. The ball gets stuck on the rim, just craziness is happening. And, to win in double overtime against your rival, get to hop that 8-foot wall, storm the court, enter Sandman's blaring. It's an experience that I'll never forget. And people ask me all the time, why are you so into Virginia Tech? Why do you care this much about Virginia Tech sports? And it's moments like that are why. And it's why all of us care so much about it, is because Hokie sports can sort of be this escape for us, and this place that we can really find a lot of joy. And I'm really excited to share a lot more of these moments with y'all on this podcast.
That's a beautiful sentiment, man. And that's exactly what we are hoping these game rewind episodes will do for people. Kind of trigger some of that nostalgia, make them feel the way they did on that day. And so make sure you subscribe to the Memory Lane feed on Spotify, the Too Deep feed on Spotify. It's the same feed. If you're already subscribed to Too Deep, you're good. If you've subscribed to the Memory Lane feed, you're good there too. And I would recommend viewing it on Spotify only because it'll be very easy to tell which episode you're looking at, because the artwork will be right there. But as always, listen to the Sons of Saturday, subscribe to all the things, give us a rating also on Spotify if you can. We got a lot of Apple ratings, but we could use some Spotify ratings. And stay tuned, because the Suns got a lot of good stuff coming up in the not too distant future. We're going to do more games very, very soon here, do some football games. And so keep it locked, and we will talk to you soon. Peace.